Here we have another logically completes question, and we can just try to complete the story, right? Don't think too hard about it. It's giving us most of the story. We need to tell the ending, so hopefully there's something that kind of just makes sense as we read. So let's just take a look. Pigments give paints and dyes their color. Ochre is a mineral-based pigment used to make several colors, including red. Red ochre gets its color from iron oxide. Pigments can also be plant-based. Plant-based pigments contain a high level of carbon. In a 2023 study, archaeologists tested the red pigment on decorated beads made by members of the Natufian culture approximately 15,000 years ago. The test showed that the pigment found on several beads contained no iron but had a high level of carbon. This finding led the researchers to conclude that. So they were talking about iron, they were talking about carbon, they were talking about all these different kinds of dyes earlier on, but I wasn't really understanding it or trying to memorize it because I'm like, these might be just useless facts. Now when I get to the end, I can tell they're trying to get me to sort through those two facts, right? There's two different kinds of dye. They leave different traces. They have different qualities. And now I have to go back because I didn't memorize those things as I was reading. I didn't want to waste my time with something that wouldn't matter. But now that I know it matters, I can go back and reread very quickly with this specific task in mind. Whenever I'm rereading a passage, I am looking for something in particular. I'm always reading with purpose. The mistake many people make on questions with any passage, on the SAT is they are rereading because they are just lost. If you were rereading because you were lost, that you're just wasting time going to reread something that you didn't understand in the first place. You have to have a purpose. So if you can't get something out of the end of that passage, then go to the choices and let them tell you what to care about. But here, I think it's really clear. We need to solve this puzzle. What is this dye? It's no iron, high carbon. So they said the red ochre gets its color from iron. So it's probably not that, not red ochre. What's the other one? The plant-based pigment contains a high level of carbon. So it's the plant one, plant-based. That's probably it. Let's see if there's a choice that kind of says that. A, the Natufian beads examine and study the oldest surviving examples of the use of plant-based pigments for decorating beads. So I like that. I like the plant-based thing, but I'm always on the lookout for words that might be problematic. Comparison words are scary. They're the oldest beads. I only think we're talking about one bead. I don't know about any other beads. So 15,000 is certainly old. They might be the oldest, but is that what they were talking about here? So I don't love that. That doesn't seem like the point of the passage. The point seems to be what is the dye that they were using. I don't know about other beads. So let's see. I don't like A for that reason, but we'll keep it for now. B, the Natufian bead makers used plant-based pigments rather than ochre to decorate some of the beads examined in the study. Well, this has some words I like, right? Some is the perfect example, but it definitely talks about the plant-based. It says that rather than ochre, so it's not using ochre. And some of the beads, right? We don't necessarily know all of them. Let's see, archaeologists test the red pigment on decorated beads. Yeah, so I don't know if all of them had this quality. Some is a nice word that's pretty flexible. It lets us say that this is what we found in this particular case without trying to extrapolate it into some big pronouncement about all the beads in the world. So I like that. It's certainly better than A, so we'll kind of star it here. C, the Natufian bead makers preferred to use plant-based pigments because they are much brighter than mineral-based pigments are. I don't know. Another comparison here. They weren't comparing the quality of the dye. They were just saying what it was made of. So they were comparing the components of the dye. They were not comparing the quality of it. And beyond that, I don't like when they start to get into people's heads. I don't know what the bead makers preferred. Maybe they preferred to use red ochre, but they just didn't have any at the time they made these beads 15,000 years ago. I don't know. So how would I know what they preferred? So this is definitely wrong. Lots of things that I don't like about it. And then D, the pigments used by the Natufian bead makers likely came from plants because ochre was difficult to find. So this is, again, making an assumption. Maybe it was difficult to find. That was kind of the hypothetical I just came up with to get rid of C. But I don't know that. Maybe they used it because they preferred it, right? So C and D are wrong because they kind of cancel each other out in a way, right? C is a reasonable thing to say, but it might be the case that they just couldn't find the ochre and they preferred the ochre. But then D kind of says that, well, hey, they would have loved ochre, but they couldn't have it. But we don't know that either. So it could be the case that they had the ochre and they thought it was terrible, so they didn't want to use it. So C and D are kind of other versions of this story that get into assumptions that we're not allowed to make And they kind of show why we're not allowed to make them, because we could easily flip the story around and say it could have been otherwise. So between A and B, it's definitely B. I have no doubt here. But I do think a lot of people are going to get this wrong because they see A, they see plant-based pigments, and they get so attached to the part of the answer choice that works, that is correct, that they don't even bother to check the thing that's wrong. So maybe they don't even bother checking the other answer choices at all. So they pick A and they don't even bother reading B, C, and D. If that's you, that's stupid. You're stupid. That was dumb. I have no problem saying that, because on every SAT question, you should look at all 4 choices. That's just basic, test taking strategy. Beyond that, though, another thing people tend to do is they get an answer they kind of like, and in their head, they have decided already that is the answer. So they do look at B, C, and D, but they're not really considering them. They're looking at them so that when when they watch the video later and I say that you're stupid for not reading all the answers, they can say, well, that wasn't me. But yeah, it was. You've got to be an open-minded judge who's not making a decision until all the evidence is presented to you. And so, yes, you might like A. You might not notice this potential problem at the word oldest. That's fine. But then when you get to B, you should be like, oh, wait a minute, this kind of works too. And the fact that you have 2 answers that you're like debating now forces you to look at those choices more carefully. And then hopefully at that point, you will notice that the word oldest is a big claim that needs to be supported, and it is not supported by the passage. It's very obvious to me because of all the practice I've had doing this. I understand if it's not obvious to you at first, but you cannot overlook it. There are other choices here that are pretty good, and that would make you second guess choice A. And, oldest is a comparison word. It's one of those things that you need to be on the lookout for. And hopefully, yes, you notice it right away like I did. But even still, this is not the kind of question I would say is hard. It's got a lot of traps, but they're very predictable traps. And you need to be able to get past this and get this question right. So it is a hard question for the easy module, but this could easily appear in the first module, and you don't want to get this wrong then and waste points. You also, if you saw this in the hard module, I know I'm talking a long time about this question, but it's because it's important. On the real SAT, if I saw this question, I would be able to get this right in just a few seconds, maybe 2 minutes tops, because it's kind of a lot of text to read. But this is a very easy question that you cannot afford to get wrong if you want to have any hope of getting over a 700 on the SAT.